Okay. Oh. Okay. Oh. Okay. Oh. Can everyone hear me? Okay, great. Awesome. And the music works. Yay! Well, happy summer solstice, happy Saturday. Thank you for coming. This is Mambo Hip Hop. My name is Quintero. And so today we'll be going over, I'll share a little bit about myself and also the history of Latinos, how Puerto Rico and Cuba responded to colonialism, how the result was a migration of people and artists, and be sharing music of collaborations between American jazz artists and Caribbean artists as well. And then we'll talk about the Bronx, what was happening in the Bronx in the 70s and how with redlining and Black and Brown communities being together, how they collaborated and really created no matter what. So I always think about, yes, we can talk about history and systems that may not support us, but that the resiliency in the creation has really sparked so many movements, and now hip hop is 50 years old. So, and then we'll take a break, and then we can do some dance embodiment if folks are up to it, if they are capable or willing. So a little bit about myself. I was born and raised in Seattle, have Ecuadorian parents, and I'm multiracial. I'd say detribalized Indigenous woman. I'm European, African, and Indigenous. And I'm a best-selling author, a professional speaker and coach for Lisa Nichols. And I'm always amazed that I get the opportunity to share stories, share my own stories, American history, and also the history of all the lineages that brought me to this moment. But it wasn't always that way. I think growing up, I was like, how can I be 3 different things and still be called Hispanic or Latino? I didn't understand that growing up. So that really put me on this life journey. This really put me on this life journey of who am I? How did I become who we are as a people, and how did we become known as Hispanic or Latino? So the Western Hemisphere, I always like to share that the Western Hemisphere, these are all the indigenous groups, all the languages, millions of people, right? And so unfortunately, with European travelers, colonists, settlers, I learned about colonization, and it's important to know it because without it, then it helps you understand how Latinos were created. Unfortunately, here's a definition of colonization, an action or process of settling and establishing control over indigenous people over a particular area. And so we have a worldview that has disinvited African, Asian, Persians, and that has shaped our laws. And I'll be going into the first one is Doctrine of Discovery, which was created by Pope Nicholas. And so basically he had King Alfonso of Spain make sure that they capture, vanquish, and subdue anyone who is not Christian. I didn't even know that this word called Saracens, it's Arab Muslims or nomadic people in the Middle East, and anyone who was pagan. So even at this time in Europe, pagan simply just means people that are one with the earth. And so there were a lot of European pagans that also lost their culture, their rights, their rituals during this time, especially women. European women did at this time. So this law allowed Columbus to, in 1492, discover the Western Hemisphere. And also the English crown used this law as well. And it's also important that not only did they have the doctrine of discovery, but terra nullius, which means that it defined land as anything inhabited by heathens, pagans, unbaptized people was considered unoccupied lands. And so that's important to know because that law, that mindset has informed laws and the colonial ego, which today is helps to discern, right? So Latinos, especially with my family history, but also in general, like we dealt with genocide, colonization. We also been enslaved systemically, and then we're always a forever foreigner. So even though we've been here and we migrate, our families are still separated, is still incarcerated. So this was just important to know, like a global strategy for domination. And these are also the three pillars of white supremacy as well. Entrenched in all of them is patriarchy, like hetero patriarchy, and all the institutions support that. So matrilineal societies were also vanquished during this time. So some laws, so Tennessee, right? Tennessee used the doctrine of discovery, and many of these terms and definitions you can find in indigenomics. I always like to honor the people that I learned from. So Carol Ann Hilton has a great book called Taking a Seat at the Economic Table. So in South Carolina, 1740, there was a law called the Negro Act, and it outlawed the drum. So think about like 1700s, like our country wasn't formulated. It was still a colony. We didn't even have 13 colonies at that time yet, but there was also a strong push to make sure African and indigenous people could not dance. So the drum and dancing was taken away from two groups of people, and dance is how we heal. It's how we come together. It's community building. And so this law was in place from 1883 to 1978. I mean, I was 3 years old when finally Native Americans could dance as a spiritual practice. And many people don't realize how that law was in place and don't know that history. So the nexus is New Orleans. There's so much I could say about New Orleans, but I'll just say in the 1800s, it was where everyone was traveling, all types of people from around the world. This is where the birth of jazz, this is where the Latin tinge, song, everything was created here. There should be a whole history class just about New Orleans. So in the book, Latin Jazz, The Perfect Combination by Raul Fernandez, that's where I was able to learn a lot of this and share the history from him. So a little bit about the 1800s. So Louis Gottschalk is Haitian, and his grandmother is like singing to him. And so he actually takes the sound of the banjo and puts it in piano form. He travels to Paris, and it becomes a huge hit. So he ends up dedicating a song to Isabella II of Spain, or the second. And I think it's called, if we can play the song. I believe so. El Banjo. So he takes the piano and then he makes that sound of the banjo. He's also known for bringing out the danza. It used to be contra danza, and he made danza really big as well. So also what's happening in the 1800s is 3 political paradigms are created at this time. we're still in colonialism. There's a free for all. There's not much structure in the Western Hemisphere or in the world. And so you have capitalism really birthing, you have communism and socialism. And so at this time, Puerto Rico and Cuba respond very differently to colonialism. So this is like right around like the 1900s, the early 19th century, right? So Spain is still controlling Puerto Rico and Cuba, and Puerto Rico's been a colony since 1508, right? So the Jones Act comes in and basically says, okay, you're an island, but you cannot trade and be sovereign. You have to use U.S. merchant marines. And so that completely economically colonized Puerto Rico because they had to borrow all this money just to be able to get goods back and forth because they weren't able to be sovereign. It's still a law in place to this day. And so you have, Puerto Rico producing sugar and coffee, and, there's a Great Depression. And finally, in 1947, they get their first governor. Now, Cuba, on the other hand, they were also a colony, not, 1513, and producing sugar and coffee and all those being treated as a sharecropper. But after the Spanish-American War, they do win their independence in 1898. So for them, they then quickly were like, okay, how are we going to be in this world? What's really happening? And so around this time, they founded the first socialist party in 1925. Now, at this time, think about it. World War I ended in 1917. The British conquered the Ottoman Empire. And also in 1917, you have Vladimir Lenin, who really had the Russian Revolution and was really brought the Bolshevik Party. And so Cuba was like, okay, we're going to go in this direction. Finally, in 1959, they have a one-party Marxist system and become a communist country. And so, whether it's Puerto Rico, who stayed as a colony and it was trying to become a state, or whether it was Cuba, was like, okay, we have our independence, we're going to be a communist country, both led to people leaving the islands. People migrated and brought with them their culture, their language, their music. And so the first collaboration is with Luis Russell, who was actually from Panama. And he relocated to New Orleans. He started working with Louis Armstrong. I mean, Louis Armstrong, talk about the founder of jazz, right? 5 decades. And so Armstrong has him be the director. And this is Louise Russell. On my side, my mother's side, that's where I have my African lineage. And so my family is from Panama. Like they helped liberate Guayaquil from the Spaniards, but originally they're Panamanian. And so I wanted to include Louis Russell, and it should be, maybe we can let's do Louis Armstrong first. Because I want to share the sound of the horns, and so you all can feel like that flow. And of course, big band was huge at this time. That sultry jazz. Yeah. And then with Louis Russell, it's still with horns, but you start hearing the tempo change. The danza. So he brings, of course, more of the danza, but also like it's moving faster. I don't know if the middle has the horns with the piano. So they're already starting to merge sounds, and then we have, thank you for coming, May. Then you have Duke Ellington, who, of course, another jazz legend, and he starts working with Juan Tisol from Puerto Rico. Now, some people ask, okay, how did this happen? Well, we still had redlining. I mean, Black and brown communities could not buy houses or rent or be in certain neighborhoods in the Americas. And so there was a lot of collaborations. And so, yeah, let's hear a Duke Ellington song. So good. It's like a meal. It's not bad. And then they created a song called Caravan, which it's already bringing the drums in, which is a whole new thing. And it just becomes this epic sound song. And of course, a lot of film starts borrowing and it becomes huge in Hollywood, right? I always talk about, how do you know about Mambo? Like, I Love Lucy. Thank you. So then we have this Cuban composer that really starts bringing all these Cuban artists to North America. A lot of them, there's music called son. Of course, there's rumba, and so he starts working with Antonio Machini, and this one song is just called Money. It's basically when they're out, they would sell things and they'd have that thing around their neck that would hold up and they'd sell the candies, and we hear this guy selling peanuts. So the whole song is called El Macinero. So really bringing in those Cuban rhythms, the drum, and they still have the horns. It's just like all coming together. Yeah. And like you can do like rumba, I mean you can like mambo, like you know, it's just a cha-cha-cha, you can do cha-cha-cha to the kids. So it's yeah. So as we continue on, like jazz is like just taking over. I mean, jazz is everywhere, everyone loved it. And Dizzy Gillespie, he then is known for creating the bebop. And I didn't know that it was a song, it was music for the youth at the time, that they were the ones who made it much more popular because it was like awakening their spirit. Because the other stuff is great and beautiful, but it was kind of more slower, older generation. So let's see, at this song, can you play? Yeah. yeah, I mean, this is like so much faster. I mean, just think about dancing, right? It's like now people do the swing, the Lindy Hop, and they have something really fast that like lets them with energy. So then this goes from bebop to they call it Cubop, like Cuban bebop, and he works with Mario Barso, and it just I mean he was a trumpeter for Cab Calloway. I mean it was just so many artists working together, creating gems for us to enjoy even to this day. One in particular, Chano Pozo, one of the things that I loved about him is Cuban, Afro-Cuban, and I want to pull up something about him. Second, find it. So he was actually a dancer, and um, he is from Cuba. But one of the things that was interesting about him was he spoke Abacoa, which is a secret African dialect only spoken by men in Cuba. So he was just even when I was like trying to figure out his exact date of when he was born in a neighborhood in Cuba where they didn't even track who was born and at what time and all that. But he came, he danced, he was part of the Catherine Dunham troupe, and he brought the drum in a whole new way. I think the song, it's the Chano Balzo and then with the Gillespie, it has both their names on it. And it's probably, oh yeah. So that's him, definitely bringing the African drum. It's, and the other thing is El Clave, right? So El Clave is the clave is like so crucial to the music. It's Afro-Cuban, it's two wooden pegs put together. It is, I'd say, the framework to let usually the lead singer will be doing a clave because he'll know when to sing, the horns will know when to come in, the percussionist too. I mean, it just brings it all together. So it's almost like a code. So I love it that he was able to include all of that. And a lot of this, some of this I got from the Rhythm of Latin Music. It's called Salsa by Charlie Gerard with Marty Scheller. And now you have like Cuban heat, right? You have machito. And I'd say that machito was powerful because he worked with the Mario Balso composer and was invited to come to New York City in like 1937. But he settled in Harlem. He worked with Duke Ellington, Louis Armstrong, Count Basie, Fletcher Henderson, and did two things. He made Q-bop huge and salsa. So he brought both of those genres to the forefront. And I think there's a song of Machito. So here you have the aggressive horns. You definitely got the drums. And of course, I have to mention Benny Moore, who is a Cuban cultural icon. I mean, he did son, mambo, montono, boleros. He's in the Latino Hall of Fame, really huge. So then we have Mambo Madness, Tito Rodriguez, right? Like he is from Puerto Rico. He unfortunately became an orphan and then came to New York City and started playing with Eric Madruguera and also the Mambo Wolves. He founded Cheo Feliciano, who ended up being a huge salsa star and part of the Fania All Stars. Um, so I think I have a song, Tito Rodriguez. Yep, and then Mambo is like Mama, honoring this grandmother. You also have Perez Prado, who really has this huge hit called Mambo Number. It's like he was just called the king of Mambo, and he was part of the same group out of Cuba called La Sonora Matancera, which that group left Cuba after the revolution. Celia Cruz was part of that whole group. So not only was he making music that titled him the King of Mambo, but he was also already making music with Celia Cruz. So no wonder, they all had these relationships and they escaped to Mexico. That was the first place where they went. Mexico helped them out a lot. So you have this club, the Palladium in New York, and man, they dance and have like the best parties. Like, if I could go back in time, I would definitely want to hit up the Palladium. And some people ask, like, how did salsa come to be? It's like, well, Cal, I don't know how to say his last name, I think Tater, but he was like, oh, this is soul sauce. And so that he actually coined the term salsa. So now you have, salsa, you have these aggressive horns. It's like a mix, different artists will bring son, they'll bring guaracha, montuno, and of course, and then you have the queen of salsa, Celia Cruz, who, I mean, more than 75 records, 24 Grammys, and just everyone around the world knows her and loves her. Like, I don't think there's been any place that I visited that doesn't know who Celia Cruz is. So here at this time too, so this is like, okay, the 60s, and then we're entering the 70s, right? And Ishmael Rivera, huge sonero. And one of the things that he did was he brought very powerful songs and spoke to the injustice of the world. So there's one song by Ishmael Rivera that I think is called El Tempón. And so you're dancing to the song. It's a great production, you're dancing to it, but as he is speaking or singing, yeah, I love song. He's telling you, El Tempón means someone with big lips, because Tempón is their lips. And he's actually telling you a horrific story of police brutality and what was happening in New York City. Oh, this is a different one. So the next one, yeah. That song is talking about Black love. He's saying the beautiful faces of my Black people, and so he did a lot for, I'd say, Afro-Latinos to like love themselves and like give love to the community and also speak truth to power. But can you play the other song? Is it there? It's um is it called Bembon? But this, oh no, that's how it is. Okay, so maybe, uh, yes. So salsa's already full blown, and now it's talking about injustice. So this is saying, oh my goodness, they killed this black man. And I mean, everyone's still cheering and dancing to this music, right? And they said, okay, the police arrived and they found the person who killed him. So why did they kill him? And then they asked, he's a black police officer. And they say, and he said, do you know the reason why he was killed? What was your reason for killing him? And the guy says, I killed him simply because he had big lips. And so it's just the song, and the song is like fun and everyone's dancing, but this is how we were able to speak to the injustice of what was happening, but still have joy, like still dance, still enjoy ourselves no matter what. And so Ishmael Rivera, I mean, he's from Santurce, Puerto Rico, and civil rights leader that, I just think should always live in infamy because we're still to this day speaking of the same things that he was singing about. And sometimes when people dance salsa, they don't know the music that they're dancing to. And what's the message? So now we have Roberto Roena. And what I like about this song is the epitome of where so much was happening in the Bronx and the horns. And then he includes like a break beat into the song. And so in the 70s, you had disco, you had the hustle. Yeah. I mean, it's just like those horns. So the song and the dance component is my favorite song because you can top rock, break, and you can do salsa to this, and it's just amazing. So he was in El Gran Combo de Puerto Rico, a big part of the Fania All-Star success. So at this time, what's happening in the Bronx? Well, the Bronx is burning. They are, at this time you have disco, you have the hustle, and unfortunately, because the city had decided to build a freeway in the middle of the Bronx, all the owners of stores and apartments started burning down their buildings because they wanted to at least get the insurance money. So people died. I have numerous friends that had their apartments and everything that they owned destroyed. And then you had one of the biggest white flights out of the Bronx. And so 80% of housing was lost to fires. 80%. I mean, this is happening in the United States of America. And so 91% of everyone in the South Bronx is either Black or Puerto Rican. So, you definitely have the redlining, of course, but you also have this collaboration of like people, creating the hustle, which is another dance that is similar to salsa, but it's much more freer. It doesn't ask for that much. And you have these forgotten children that are, raised in, do I have another photo? Let me see. I don't have another photo, but basically there were blocks upon blocks of just rubble. It looked like a war zone. And so for me, when I headed to New York to meet legendary hip hop artists that could tell me how that was, that was their childhood experience. And the fact that they still chose to create, I'm always like, I just said like, oh my goodness, thank you for, right? Because hip hop, I mean, I think for all of us, at least for me, hip hop saved me at a time was like, I needed to exert my rage and anger through dance. And then I also needed a place where I could speak to the injustices of politics, and it was welcome and it was a shared understanding. And that just makes you feel like home, right? When there's like an understanding that is everyone knows about. So we have, of course, Cool Herc, who takes the song from the bongo rock and takes the Apache song and just, man, it just goes viral. So yeah, I mean, wait, this is Sugar Hill Gang. This is not Apache, or is it? Let's see. It does say Apache? I think they mixed it. Maybe it's a mix. Yeah, this is Sugar Hill Gang. Yeah. So with hip hop, there's graffiti to pop, I like it's like the urban hieroglyphics, right? It's like our topography. It's the way that the forgotten children were going to be seen no matter what. And one of the things that they would do is when they would paint trains, the goal was to be all city, meaning the goal was to be known in every borough. And so there was a lot of collaborations with so many different artists from Brooklyn to the Bronx to Queens to it just Manhattan. And there's such a rich history there, but it was an act of getting up. It was like your own like campaign when people think about marketing, like this is like grassroots level marketing to get your name out there because they had to hide. So even the fact that people would talk about, oh my goodness, did you see that piece that top to bottom and it had a wild style or it had, it's all the arrows or the icons. Sometimes they put characters. So rich history there with graffiti. So it's beautiful that we're in a space where we can see the art, emceeing, rapping, being a master of ceremony, being able to be with the crowd and have the crowd do this and that, whether it's asking them to dance or, shouting out. And so, rapping, now poetry, a form of poetry, a form of spoken word, DJing, the fact that those became instruments. So no longer was there like a band the way it was before with the orchestra and the horns and all that. Basically, they just took two record players and started using the records as drums and going from one to another to create that sound. And then you have, of course, the dance, b-boying. So hip hop, the original dance is breakdancing, right? It's b-boying, b-girling. Starts with the top rock, you have a drop, you do your footwork, you got freezes, you got power, but it's still a dance. Now, on the West Coast, they had pop-in and lock-in, and that has its own history, but from the Bronx, breakdancing was definitely born there. And then also political action, like hip-hop has always been about speaking to what is needed, speaking to what is happening, and most importantly, to continue to create. And that's one of the things that I'd say I learned in, my experience, and we all contribute to the hip hop culture. Like, I feel like there's a web of life and we're each like a spider making our little line, and we're contributing to that collective culture and that collective experience, even life, right? Humanity. We're always doing that in the world, but especially if we speaking to terms of the culture, everyone has a story and a lineage and a contribution to it. And I think that's the beauty of why I love to talk about Mambo de Hip Hop, is to see the collaborations and to see that no matter what all of us have faced in one way or another, we still choose to create. So here are some, Little Ed, Frosty Freeze, Kent Swift, Rockefeller, Flip Rock, to name some Afro-Latinos that are graffiti artists, who, Kel First, Mayor 139, just to also, so people know Black and Brown communities were there, we created it together, and the top rocks, there's the Indian step, the kick step, side, Bronx step, the hip twist, and so just remember to just keep creating culture. Thank you so much.
I want to take the class. I want to sign up for your university class, please.
Yeah.
That was amazing.